Obzon Company. This is the deck to beat right now in Modern.
Yeah, you have to imagine that this one was on Gerry's radar for testing, and you also have to figure that Nick has no idea, has never played against Gerry's deck until this moment right now.
Well, it's interesting. GP Detroit was the Eldrazi Grand Prix, and actually Obzon Company did win it, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, this deck was still playable through all of Eldrazi Winter. And so the resurgence of Lightning Bolt is actually what makes this deck a little bit worse now that we're in spring, as it were.
Yeah, turn 1 Temple Garden into Birds of Paradise for Langenhorst. But you mentioned it, Gerry, a basic mountain into Lightning Bolt to take care of the Birds of Paradise. Back during the Eldrazi Winter, Eldrazi decks didn't play Lightning Bolt.
No, it just was nowhere near what they needed to be doing. They just played creatures that were larger than the small creatures and didn't care about things like Birds of Paradise.
And Gerry Thompson showing off still the strength that is Eldrazi Temple. On turn 2, he plays Temple into Matter Shaper. Ramp spells that cost 0, those things seem great.
Matter Reshaper is not the best thing to accelerate into. I was asking Gerry about his deck yesterday, and I said, how you like Matter Reshaper? And none of the words that he used were the word good.
It's like passable, fine.
He said, it's sweet, is what he said.
For Langenhorst, he now made his way up to 3 lands. He'll go ahead and cast Scavenging Ooze. Now, it does look like a basic mountain in play for Langenhorst.
Yeah, that one's a little spicy.
Yeah, so this is actually...
Must be Kiki
yeah,
cording?
this is Kiki Cord, not Obzon Company.
All right.
You said, wait, Obzon, they don't play that.
Generally, no.
The play will be a Eternal Witness here for Langenhorst. He'll go ahead and get any card back out of his graveyard. He'll choose one of his lands. Now, this matchup, a little more interesting. So rather than being a value-based deck, Kiki Cord is all about assembling the combination of Restoration Angel and Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker.
The deck can certainly assemble its own value packages, and it's not outside of the question to win the game with, say, Voice of Resurgence Elemental tokens, Pia and Kira and Nalar, though most of the games do end on that Restoration Angel Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker note.
One thing now, he has differed a little from the Jeff Hoagland build, not playing any copies of Nahiri the Lithomancer today.
Yeah, and Wildly is playing a 60-card main deck. That is some spicy innovation for Kiki Cord.
For Gerry Thompson, he will play a Forest and cast Sylvan Scrying. This is interesting here. You can't, because there's only Eldrazi Temples and not Ayabugans, what Gerry has done, he's playing 4 copies of Ancient Stirrings and 4 copies of Sylvan Scrying in his deck just to get more Eldrazi Temples.
There's a little bit of a package outside of that. He has a Kessig Wolf run that can make these creatures more impactful, particularly the Matter Reshaper doesn't do a lot of damage on its own. There's a Raging Ravine if we want to find a creature with our Sylvan Scrying. And he's got a Ghost Quarter to mess with lands and a Cavern of Souls to make his Eldrazi uncounterable.
So Gerry will find an Eldrazi Temple and then attack with Matter Reshaper. No blocks by Nick. And post-combat, Gerry Lightning bolts away the Scavenging Ooze. You think he was hoping that Nick would trade the Eternal Witness maybe for Matter Reshaper?
Yeah, or if the Scavenging Ooze got in front, the Matter Reshaper is not going to matter a lot as a creature in this matchup. There's plenty of 2-power creatures for Nick to throw in the way.
You're saying it's not going to matter, huh? Eternal Witness will hit back for 2. For all the text on Matter Reshaper, I rarely see that creature die and get to use its ability.
It gets exiled quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. you look at you look at the text and you might think this is a great card. Oh, I just can't wait till I flip the top card, till this hits the graveyard. Yeah, it doesn't happen that much.
They don't print a lot of cards with beneficial leaves the battlefield triggers anymore. Revelark is kind of a prominent example of something they used to print, where that one doesn't have to hit the graveyard, but with the Reshaper, if you exile it, no benefit.
Well, turn 4 here from Nick was an attack with Eternal Witness, and then they tap out for Pia and Kiran Nalar, the rare from Magic Origins. The 2 Artificers bringing along a pair of Thopters. This card really has come onto its own in Modern in the last year.
Yeah, this card initially when it was printed, it was like, okay, this is neat. Maybe we can play it. Saw a little bit of standard play, but it's actually been extremely impressive in Modern.
Matter Shaper will attack again. Nick still does not want to trade that one with Gerry. And he actually goes to 8 on the attack, which you might wonder, how's he gotten so low? 6 hits, 6 points of damage have been off Matter Reshaper, but 6 points of damage have actually been taken off Nick's own lands. You see those, or rather 4 points have. You see the Temple Garden and the Stomping Ground. Nick has had to pay life for both of those, including fetching for them.
Yeah, playing these 4-color decks, you know, the heavy green deck that needs triple red for Kiki Jiki. That's going to add up over the course of a game.
On Gerry's turn, he casts Talisman of Dominance and then casts another Sylvan Scrying. So he'll be flush with Eldrazi Temples.
So Pia and Kieran is at a really good rate. You get 4 power, 4 toughness, a couple flyers, all for 4 mana. Though typically in Modern, you're able to throw away the Thopters to target an opponent's creature profitably. The only creature you can kill with 1 Thopter out of Thompson's deck is Matter Reshaper. Yeah,
and we've already shown that Nick doesn't really want to kill that one.
Right.
He will swing for 4 and then use a Thopter to shoot down Matter Reshaper. So Gerry's at 13. You see the card reveal that Gerry will put in his hand is a copy of Flame Slash, the 4 damage spell from Rise of the Eldrazi. He has 2 copies in the main.
From Rise of the Eldrazi, it's on theme. It's an Eldrazi deck.
And now he'll pass. Nick down to 8. He does have to start worrying about the fact that Gerry played a Raging Ravine last turn and that Gerry's deck could produce a Reality Smasher, I would think. You see Gerry slashing away the Eternal Witness, activating Raging Ravine, swinging for 4. This is the fairest Eldrazi deck I've seen in a while.
Yeah, you mean that the game is still being played despite Nick only playing a couple anemic creatures?
Gerry's played 3 1-mana kill spells and is beating Nick up with Matter Reshapers and Raging Ravines.
Yeah, the removal spells played during Eldrazi Winter were very premium. It was all Path to Exiles and all Dismembers. Flame Slash is very much a nod to the fact that this deck needs some removal spells and they need to be kind of robust.
So Nick now down to 4. He's got to watch out. He just doesn't lose on damage. You see Revelark in his hand. Now that one does combo very well with things like the Eternal Witness in his graveyard.
Yeah, if he plays a 6-mana source, he can go ahead, evoke the Revelark, get the Eternal Witness back onto the battlefield, return the Revelark to his hand. There's a Birds of Paradise hanging out down there as well. That one could come back. I believe a Scavenging Ooze still in the graveyard too.
All right, well Nick will keep the damage on. Both Pia and Kieran and Thopter will attack. Then Nick will play Revelark and pass the turn.
Casting it also not bad. Again, this is that leaves the battlefield trigger. So unless Gerry has something that just taps it, not an ability you really see in a red-green deck, that's going to be a very good blocker here.
Yeah, we look at Gerry's hand. It looks like he has 2 more copies of the Talisman of Impulse along with another Sylvan Scrying. So he's all lands or mana.
Well, with Sylvan Scrying, we can find Kessig Wolfrun.
Oh, okay.
We don't have really as much mana as we need to activate the Ravine and get that online just yet. But we can play the Scrying, play the Talisman this turn, build up towards something.
Does have to watch out. Gerry's at 9 and there's currently 7 power on Nick's side of the board.
Yes, 7 power and an activation of Pia and Kieran.
Okay, so that's actually lethal.
I guess we have to do something a little bit better than plan for next turn then. Doesn't look like Gerry's hand can really do it though.
Here's a Talisman from Gerry. He'll tap 2 for another Talisman, play a land for the turn, and he'll pass. Yeah, that's just enough mana to activate Ravine as a blocker.
Right.
So go back over to Nick. A copy of Chord of Calling was picked up. That may be able to end the game for him.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough one for Nick to lose.
Here's Birds of Paradise. Now, Nick does not have anything like Fiend Hunter to take care of Raging Ravine.
Right. Though at this stage, he's fine just throwing a creature in the way. Until we see that Wolfrun online, chump blocking is totally fine. Particularly with the Revelark, which will just replace itself 2 times over.
Now, Gerry here is going to go ahead and fetch for a tapped Stomping Grounds. That takes away his mana to activate Ravine, doesn't it?
Well, Nick has passed the turn. So
Nick didn't attack.
He's just leaving up all these creatures to make a big Chord of Calling right now.
So that makes sense. But at the same time, Nick the attack there, I guess he didn't want to put Pia and Kieran, he didn't want to get eaten by Raging Ravine.
Yeah, he's just playing it safe.
All right, we'll go back over to Thompson. He'll need a pretty good draw. Draws Cavern of Souls. I don't think that's the one he's looking for.
No, not in this matchup. The Kiki Chord deck, 4 colors, none of which are blue. No counter spells about here. Gerry has plenty of red and green mana, so the mana fixing ability also not coming into play here. Not to mention no spells to cast with it.
Players in the Standard Classic, just a couple more announcements. We have our clock set up to my right, probably.
Thompson all lands here. Another situation where the loss of Ayavugan does hurt. If we're able to scry someone scrying for Ayabugan at some point in this game, maybe he would have had more threats.
Yeah, there was also, if Ayabugan were legal, there would likely be something like an Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger in Gerry's deck that could be more impactful on this board.
He'll play a land and pass, and now it is Chord of Calling from Nick Langenhorst.
It's like we're going for 4.
Maybe a Restoration Angel. That will be the card. Restoration Angel will, when it enters the battlefield, will cause another creature to be exiled and come back immediately. A very powerful interaction with Revelark, as Revelark leaves the battlefield, meaning 2 more creatures come back. And that's enough for Gerry Thompson. Game 1 goes to Nick Langenhorst and Kiki Chord.
Yep, Revelark, Restoration Angel blinks non-angels, and while Revelark is white with wings, it is just an elemental. We can blink that one.
Yeah, it has Evoke. That was the theme of Lorwyn, right? All those Evoke creatures being elementals.
Yeah, the creatures that could act as spells.
We'll go ahead and look through the players' sideboards as they get ready for the second game. They'll see how they want to change up their deck for this matchup. We'll start over on Gerry Thompson with his red-green Eldrazi deck. What he has available are 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Spellskites, 3 Feed the Clans, an All is Dust, a Ghost Quarter, 2 Ancient Grudges, 2 Natural States, and 2 Warping Whales.
I definitely like All is Dust here. Just a big sweeper we can cast off of Eldrazi Temple. Grafdigger's Cage stops creatures from entering the battlefield from libraries, right?
Yeah. Players,
so that'll interact with Chord of Calling positively.
It's good against Chord of Calling. That might be it, so it's interesting whether or not he'd want to use that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not super in love with that one. Mostly I'm looking at the All is Dust.
Right, now what about something like Warping Whale? I suppose Nick has some 1 toughness or 1 power creatures.
There's some Birds of Paradise hanging around. We could hit like a Wall of Roots. It's just most of the stuff is 2 power. We can exile Eternal Witness to stop any loops from that. It's fine. It could certainly come in.
Yeah, of note, what Nick has done here is he has 2 different combos in his deck that he can get. He does have the Restoration Angel Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker that you'd expect. He's also playing 1 Spike Feeder and 1 Archangel of Thune as an option for the matchup.
Okay, all kinds of ways to go off.
All right, well, we'll look at Nick's sideboard. A lot of different one-ofs. Burnt Forge Tender, Spellskite, Phyrexian Revoker, 2 copies of Stony Silence, a Scavenging Ooze, 3 copies of Lightning Helix, 1 Aven Mind Sensor, Eidolon of Rhetoric, Linvala, Keeper of Silence, Fracturing Gust, Sigarda, Host of Herons, and Engineered Explosives.
Yeah, so Gerry has those Sylvan Scryings. We can mess with that with Aven Mind Sensor. It's cute. It's not overly oppressive, but it does have flying, and that's going to matter a lot. Gerry's mostly hanging out on the ground. Until he gets the World Breaker, you just make some bodies to gum up the ground. The Mind Sensor can fly over. And for that reason, this is not the matchup it's necessarily for, but I could certainly see Sigarda, Host of Herons coming in. Just a big 5/5 flyer to go over the top, and if it comes to it, jump in front of a Reality Smasher.
Yeah, something that's just untargetable by Gerry's removal.
Right.
All right. For those of you joining us on our broadcast here, we're broadcasting live on StarCityGames.com and on Twitch TV. You can join us all weekend. We'll be here covering throughout the day. Now, for subscribers, we have some new things we're going to be doing today. First of all, we have our subscribers-only chat. If you subscribe to us over in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, if you're watching us on Twitch, you get custom emoticons. You can be part of the chat. Now, the newest thing we'll be doing is after the 6 rounds of Swiss play today, so after round 15, when we cut to the top 8, we will announce the bracket, we'll announce the matchups and the players, and then we will have a live vote on Twitch TV to decide which match we'll be covering. So you can pick your favorite player or your favorite deck and what you'd want to see on coverage. You do need to be a subscriber to be part of that, so you may want to sign up and follow us all weekend here at twitch.tv/SCG Live.
Yep, never too late to subscribe. I assume we're going to see a lot of different decks in the top 8. Maybe see Gerry's Red-Green Eldrazi. Go ahead and vote. What deck do you want to see play? There's going to be no shortage of options, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, the field's been pretty diverse here on day 2. A fair amount of Birds of Paradise decks, but we've seen players attack it from lots of different directions.
Oh yeah, we've seen some Juns, some Abzons, the various Birds of Paradise combo decks, some Grixuses.
Sure. Well, we're underway here with the second game between Thompson and Langenhorst. Gerry Thompson will be on the play. He starts with Stomping Ground into Ancient Stirrings. He will look at the top 5 cards, pick a colorless card to put into his hand. Looks like he has some choice of options. Talisman of Impulse, one of the options. That's the one he'll pick. It's the 2-mana Mana Rock that makes both red and green mana. Put it into his hand and pass the turn.
Yep, one of his ways to get ahead on mana in the absence of Aya Vugan. Plays 4 copies in his deck. It definitely has earned its spot. One of the ways to get that turn 3 Thought-Knot Seer online.
Mana ramp on Nick's side as well. He starts out with a basic forest and a Birds of Paradise.
I believe I spot a Lightning Bolt in Gerry's hand as well. We could go land,
Bolt the Bird.
Talisman, Bolt the Bird. So this is or we can play Aegis Stirrings. That's also very good.
So that option, he plays the Talisman he found. Now we'll use that green mana to cast another Ancient Stirrings. We look at his cards. Now this is interesting. He picked up Grove of the Burn Willows. That's a red-green land. He could have had Thought-Knot Seer there, and you mentioned how good Thought-Knot Seer turn 3 is on the play, but Gerry has other intentions.
Yeah, it could be that he doesn't have his next land drop lined up. He's building towards, say, a Reality Smasher or a World Breaker.
Okay. For Langenhorst, his turn 2 play is Spellskite. Plays a tap land. Well, looks like Thompson already had one Thought-Knot Seer. Maybe he passes up on the second. He'll cast the 4/4 and now look over at Langenhorst's hand. We see Spike Feeder, 2 copies of Chord of Calling, and 2 lands. Gerry will get to exile any one of those.
It's kind of unfortunate that he only gets one. Any combination of 2 of these cards represents an infinite combo. Whether it could be Spike Feeder plus Chord for Archangel of Thune, or just 2 chords that could generate a combo, though we're a bit shy on mana just at this stage in the game.
Yeah, he's going to take one of the Chord of Callings out of Nick's hand. So someone like Gerry's savvy enough, though, that when he sees Spike Feeder, you'd think he knows that Archangel of Thune is in Nick's deck.
Yeah, we're not just playing that card to gain 4 life, and even if that were the case, this is not the matchup where we would be bringing that in.
Spike Feeder is the play here for Nick. He plays another tap land and passes. So Archangel of Thune is a 5-mana card. So Nick, to get Chord of Calling with it, will need a combination of 8 lands and creatures to go ahead and get the 3/4 Angel.
Yep, we're building up, though. We're at 3 lands and 3 creatures.
Well, Gerry, another Thought-Knot Seer. He'll go ahead and take the second Chord of Calling. It's becoming clear why he didn't want another Thought-Knot Seer.
Yeah, and now with Nick just with lands in hand, the third one, very unlikely to ever make a hit in this game.
No land drop there for Thompson.
Okay, and that's another reason, we see him take the Grove of the Burn Willows earlier. Make sure that he can get that land drop.
For Nick, he does draw a spell. It's a copy of Voice of Resurgence, so he'll put the 2/2 into play and pass back. Nick has lost all the cards in his hand, but right now it does not look like Gerry Thompson can profitably attack.
Not just yet. He's going to need to cast some spells to get there, but his hand looks to have a red card and a card with a red mana symbol with the Void.
I believe it's Kozilek's Return. He plays 4 of those in the deck.
That'd be the one.
So right now, Kozilek's Return could take care of some of these creatures. Now, Spike Feeder has the ability to take those 1/1 counters and put them on other creatures if Nick pays 2 mana.
Correct. The less often used ability on the card. Actually, the ability that inspired the graft mechanic.
Really?
Yeah. It was based on
I didn't know that. It makes
based on
sense.
the
It's a very
spikes.
Simic thing to do.
Right.
So here is a copy of Kozilek's Return. It's the 2 damage instant out of, what was it? Oath of the Gatewatch. 2 damage to each creature. So in response, Nick is going to, looks like just gain life off Spike Feeder. He's going to move a counter. Yeah, he's going to gain life off Spike Feeder and actually let all 3 of those creatures die, and the Elemental token will come into play. Now, I'm a little surprised that he didn't use a counter there to save the Voice of Resurgence.
It's entirely possible that he just blanked on that ability. It's kind of like that mode on the charm that you never used.
Right.
He is also under some significant pressure now with 2 Thought-Knot Seers attacking, though.
Gerry will attack with the Thought-Knot Seers, and this is a huge play. Nick put his 2/2 Elemental in front of a Thought-Knot Seer. Now remember, there's 2 damage on the Seer, so Nick was hoping to trade. In response, Gerry's going to Lightning Bolt the Spellskite. The Spellskite also already had 2 damage on it, so Spellskite dies. Now the Elemental's a 1/1. Now it fights the Thought-Knot Seer, and it doesn't trade. It just dies. So Nick loses all his creatures.
Yep, that was a huge swing for Gerry, and a possible misstep from Nick not moving those counters with the spike feeder.
Right, because then the Voice of Resurgence would still be alive as a 3/3. Gerry probably couldn't attack into it if it was a 3/3. It would almost certainly trade.
Right, combat would have looked significantly different on that turn.
But now Nick's down to 14 and has nothing on the board. He draws a land, passes the turn. A quick finish could be on the way for Gerry Thompson.
Yeah, it looks like it won't be long before we're going to game 3.
And of note, one thing I do like about this red-green Eldrazi deck, you see Jerry's picked up a copy of World Breaker, which means the second ability on Kozilek's return. It says whenever you cast a creature with a large devoid creature, you get to exile Kozilek's return and deal 5 damage to all of your opponent's creatures. That's available in Jerry's deck.
Right. In this particular game, that one's not going to come into play for 2 reasons. Not only does Nick not have anything going on, but Gerry would be destroying 2 of his own Thought-Knot Seers.
Yeah, he's not going to do it, but it could happen here. We see sometimes in Standard, decks play Kozilek's return without the ability to use the second half. Jerry's not doing that.
Right.
But you're right, a pair of lands won't save Nick, so we go back to the sideboards. Gerry Thompson wins game number 2. The 2 players will battle in a third and deciding game here.
Yeah, so Gerry has these 4 talismans in his deck, and Nick has access to both 2 Sony Silence. That one probably not good enough given that those are the only artifacts, but I do like the 1 Phyrexian Revoker. We can use that to try to stone rain Gerry, as it were, keep that talisman from accelerating. In that game, you know, Gerry had exactly 4 mana sources when he was casting those Thought-Knot Seers. That could have been very impactful.
Players are going to get ready for game 3 here. Now, over at StarCityGames.com all weekend long, we have our weekly sale that we've been doing here. What that means is we have a different thing on sale each week. So the sales end Monday morning at 10:59 Eastern time. So if you want to pick up, maybe make your deck look a little bit nicer, right now, this week's sale is full art basic lands. These are some of the, really my favorite things to play in decks. We have Unglued, Unhinged, Old Zendikar, and new Battle for Zendikar lands. All of them available right now over at the website at StarCityGames.com. Given the choice here, what basics do you put in your deck?
I'm all about Unhinged. Another thing, I try to play very few basic lands. You know, basics are bad, and I like the ones that I do play to pop. I think that the white bordering is kind of lame. The Unhinged lands actually like pop in a very vibrant and visible way.
Sure. You know how I feel about this whiteboarding. You got a chance to see the Valakut deck I'm currently running with lots of basic mountains in it.
Yeah, you're the scum of the earth. Matthias actually whited out the borders on some some Zendikar full arts, and some Cinderglades, and some Stomping Grounds.
They're beautiful, but we didn't white out the forests. See, it's so that you can know how many lands you have in play for Valakut. Those are the only whited out cards in the deck. So mostly black borders with a couple guest artists.
In the process of whiting out the borders, Matthias managed to mess up the corner on one of his dual lands, and that, my friends, is what we call justice.
I'm not trading them anyway. I'm third, so whatever.
You won't be able to trade them.
Nope, that one's mine for life. Go to a deciding game 3 here between the players. Kiki Cord and Nick Langenhorst will be back on the play. I don't want to whiteboarder a whole deck. I like just parts of the deck. I did have someone ask me where I got white-bordered full art Zendikar lands. Like, when did they make those?
I actually
they didn't.
I made a joke. My cube right now, it has all Zendikar basic full arts. But I made a joke about making just the planes white bordered like 6-ed.
Just to discourage people from playing them?
Yeah.
Both players will start out in just a land, no 1-drop for either player. The first play from Langenhorst will be a turn 2 Voice of Resurgence.
No Birds of Paradise, notably.
From watching Hoagland, I've known just how much better this deck is when you have a turn 1 Birds of Paradise.
Oh yeah, it's night and day. Nick even trimmed down to 60 cards to make that outcome more likely.
So it's the 2/2 Elemental into play, the one from Dragon's Maze. We'll go back over to Thompson. And he'll just ramp his way along here, turn 2 Talisman of Impulse.
Yeah, so Gerry, the only player ramping so far. If Nick does have that Phyrexian Revoker, that could make this game a lot more interesting.
Yeah, it does have that 1 copy in the sideboard. He'll go for a different artifact creature. It's Spellskite.
This one dramatically less good.
Last game, Nick played a Spellskite, and it never seemed to matter. You know, Gerry had no targeted spells in his deck.
Well, the only targeted spell that Gerry cast was targeting the Spellskite already when he lightning bolted it.
Sure. Gerry Thompson, up to 4 mana, plays a Ghost Quarter, but then passes, no Thought-Knot Seer in sight.
Yeah, now, you know, with Gerry passing on 4 mana, if that Revoker does come into play, it's likely that Gerry just has nothing on the following turn.
Yeah, he couldn't Lightning Bolt. Spellskite will take care of that.
There is the possibility that Gerry is just hanging out on Kozilek's return, though.
Oh, okay.
So we want to make sure that we respect that.
Yeah, Nick needs to play around that. Now, the ability on Voice of Resurgence could come into play if Gerry goes for Kozilek's return.
Correct.
So you're unfamiliar with it. We know that Voice of Resurgence makes a Star Elemental token when it dies. But if there's another time. If Gerry casts a spell during Nick's turn, Nick gets this huge Star Elemental creature. So it's basically off the table for Thompson.
Right, at least on this turn. He could be looking to untap and use that on his own main phase. I don't assume that Gerry is going to walk into this onboard trick.
I guess if all of Nick's other creatures are X1s, Gerry can cast a Kozilek's Return into it, and the Star that he creates would die. It would still get hit by the 2 damage. You see Eternal Witness getting back a land for Nick Langenhorst.
Right, now when Gerry's getting into the 5 mana territory, hopefully we'll start to see what spells he has in his hand.
Yeah, well now he has to be worried with 4 lands and 3 creatures in play. The card Chord of Calling becomes very potent in Langenhorst's deck.
Yeah, I think that Gerry has at least 1, looks like even 2 World Breakers in his hand, and he just doesn't quite have the mana for those yet.
So he'll play Talisman and then Kozilek's Return. So it'll kill the 2 creatures. It will go ahead and get that Elemental token for Nick.
And with 6 mana sources, if Gerry just has a land on the following turn, World Breaker would cause the Kozilek's Return to trigger from the graveyard.
It'll exile and deal 5 damage to all of Nick's things.
That's enough to clean up Spellskite and everything else in Nick's deck.
Wow.
And it'll take a land with it as well.
Gerry's doing this without any Eldrazi temples. This is really fair, right? He's playing dual lands and talismans.
Yeah, he's cast 3 spells this game so far, and 2 of them just tap for mana. So it's just a bunch of mana for Gerry.
A swing for 2 from Nick. Now, it looks like Nick's deck's not doing much, but that would be a lie. You see in his hand, he has Restoration Angel and Chord of Calling. You need to watch out for the 2-card combo of Restoration Angel and Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker.
Oh yeah, he's cooking something up.
Here is the World Breaker from Gerry. So there's 2 triggers. The first will trigger Kozilek's Return. The second will be the cast trigger. So Gerry may exile a creature. Sorry, right, not a creature. An artifact, enchantment, or land. I suppose one of the artifacts, he could hit Spellskite with it.
Would not recommend, but yes, it is an option on the table.
So World Breaker will attempt to exile Stomping Ground. And you get to choose here on Kozilek's Return. You see what Nick's doing with the phone right now. He's requested the Oracle wording on a card, and the judge is presenting it for him.
Right, mobile devices are not allowed during competitive Magic. Anytime you see a player looking at a phone, it's Oracle text.
Yeah, unless the judge hands it to you, then it's fine. There's still a concern here, right? Nick could win. On end step, he can just cast that Restoration Angel, and if he has the ability to find 3 red sources, he can just then cast. Oh, he'd have to chord for Kiki-Jiki. There's a lot that would have to happen.
Yes. There's only 1 copy in the deck, so drawing it naturally is quite uncommon.
So this is interesting. What Nick did, he redirected the ability on World Breaker from Stomping Ground to Spellskite. So Spellskite got exiled instead. Once that happened, Gerry, and he stacked the triggers in a very clever way, then the question is, would Gerry like to exile Kozilek's Return? And Gerry said, 1 creature, no thank you, and passed.
I like that a lot. Very heads-up move by both Nick and Gerry. Nick both blocking for his land, which he's going to need to have enough mana to effectively Chord for Calling here. And then Gerry, I believe he has that second World Breaker. He'll be able to use that Kozilek's Return again if he survives on this turn.
Yeah, big danger. 1 land in play from Nick should be the win. And he doesn't even need it. He draws Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker. He'll play that. That's going to combo with Restoration Angel, making infinite angels, and game and match go to Nick Langenhorst.
Well, I said it was unlikely, but it happens sometimes.
Now let's be fair. If Nick draws a land there, he has enough mana with that Chord of Calling to go find Kiki-Jiki.
Right, yeah, that's the Spellskite redirect to save his land, keep that mana in play. Very heads up by Nick. This is not his first rodeo.
Yeah. So congratulations here to Langenhorst with him and Kiki Cord move to 9-1.